whether you're on the far end of the spectrum, whether it's left or right, liberal ideology versus conservative ideology, it is a spectrum. There's a lot of like these middle zones.
I think of it more of a circle, actually.
Tell me more.
Well, I'm probably not going to recite all of the aspects of it, but I mean, I think you can easily look up like what the political circles are. That there's very little difference between fascism on the right and fascism on the left.
Agreed.
Right, and so that's where the circle kind of comes back together.
Fair enough.
Right, and so I think that's why it's more of like these fringes out here actually loop back around and touch each other. And so that's why I say it's a circle.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. So then,
simply put, but you can do a ton more research on it. There's a lot of information out there about breaking it down.
But kind of going along these lines, where would you draw the line to where it crosses over into, if it is a circle along this journey from one side to the other, where does it cross over? Like where do these, the sake of for if it's a conservative value, and I'll use this, maybe that's not the best transition, trying to understand, because you made a comment about it might as well be liberal. If you're a conservative not willing to fight for it, you might as well be liberal.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a yeah, I guess I'm just having a hard time, conveying the question that I'm trying to understand is like, what would you identify are the singular values that are conservative and not a liberal value?
I don't know that there is such a thing as a singular one.
Because I think this is where the conservative, and I've had a challenge, right? Somebody saying this person's not conservative and they are conservative. What is it that makes them that way? We use this word and it's really fluid.
Maybe it's fluid but maybe it's also that there's not a single issue to really pin it on, right? Like I think there's fiscal conservancy, right? So you want
this is helpful,
to spend, you want to tax less and let the free market work to its maximum potential. So capitalism. There's culture. Right. So like what things are happening, like, I talked about trans ideology in schools, right? Like I don't care what adults do. Adults can go do whatever they want to do. Right. Why is it so important to put it in front of kids? Right. So the kids aspect of it and indoctrinating them in this way. Like why do we need drag shows in public spaces? Right. Why is it like I've heard this community say, you want me to not exist if I can't and if I can't perform hypersexual behavior in front of children in public spaces, then that means you don't want me to exist. And I go, well, that's kind of a strange perspective to have. I mean, like, do you literally believe your existence is based upon pushing this in front of children? Right? Like that's a weird thing to say, that you don't want me to exist when you're discussing about hypersexual behavior in front of children, right? Because it literally means they're defining their existence as doing that. Anyway, so that's just one example of culture.
So thinking about this,
but there's a lot of them.
Because I've had there's my own personal belief. If you were to ask me the question, do you think there should be drag shows in public spaces? I would say no. And should the government get in the way of an organization lawfully going through the processes to hold whatever they think they want to do in a public space if they've gone through the the already established rules, right? If they've gone through and they've submitted their permits and they've done their proper ways of being able to utilize this public space for everybody, whatever they're doing, aside from already existing laws, right? As long as they're staying within the existing legal structure, can they do what they want to do? If a bunch of dudes want to dress up as women and dance around in, the park for whatever, if they're following the rules and processes, I don't see as a conservative, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I also wouldn't allow my kids to go to the park that day, right? I wouldn't be promoting it. I actually probably would assemble outside of it and protest against it, right?
Yeah.
Which is also my right to do that, right? And that's where I felt like there was this weird breakdown of a bunch of mistakes were made.
So I think there's two problems with where you're at with that. But I will say, so there's two problems, but I will say what you've articulated is the ideal world, right? Like you want things to be done equally and fairly and follow the laws.
Yeah,
right?
Follow the established rules that we've already.
So what you've said is correct, but there's two problems with executing on that in today's world. One is in St. George, the permitting process has been, I don't want to say that word. I'll say,
say the words. Say whatever words you want to say.
Well, bastardized.
Okay.
Right. They haven't been followed correctly all the time to 100%. And so what that does is that creates ambiguity in executing on that permitting process.
Okay.
Right. So, this thing over here got to bypass I forget the time frame. Let's just say it's 90 days. Whatever the process. So don't hold me to that 90 days. But let's say there's a number of days in which the rule says, hey, a person asking for a permit needs to follow it this number of days in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's been broken a number of times.
Yeah.
So now somebody else can break it. Right? So that's just one aspect. But there's other aspects.
Is that the way that
that's an aspect.
But if you were to say, I got pulled over for speeding and they didn't give me a ticket, that means speeding's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going into another whole thing about police, what's the word I'm looking for? Where they can choose what to implement or not, right? They have discretion. There's officer discretion in what they apply, right? So you're right. They could pull somebody over and they say, I'm in a good mood. I'm not going to give you a ticket. I'll just give you a warning.
Yeah. Thanks to the Santa Clara police for giving me the pass the other day when I was driving my kid I appreciate that. It was very nice. Gave my son a sticker. We were headed to the doctor. Gave me the pass.
All right. You've been like, you might
speed on Santa Clara Boulevard.
You might be the only guy in history to ever get a warning on speeding, but
no, but I guess my only pushback on that is that if other people have been allowed to break that rule in the past, it doesn't necessarily, it undermines whoever did that, giving them the pass, but it doesn't necessarily say that rule, because it's been ignored, still shouldn't be followed next time.
Well, except it gives them room to go to court and sue, which that's what happened. Right?
I guess because
I have a feeling legally police discretion is probably very different than city council discretion. Like, I don't even know there's such a thing as city council discretion. There's laws on the books, right? There's regulations, there's ordinances, and those things need to get followed.
Right.
And
fair enough.
And it's actually very bad policy. This is also something that happened recently in St. George. Very bad policy of things like, we're going to create an ordinance, but we're going to leave it up to police discretion of how they enforce it. Like, that's incredibly poor planning.
The RV thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredibly poor planning to say, we're trying to address this one thing, but we're going to create a very broad blanket ordinance, and police will just have to be smart enough to decide when to enforce it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So that's bad. That's bad policy.
Bad policy.
And so I think the same thing is true with the permitting, right? I think there's vagueness in the permitting rules, and I think you basically need to, in order for people not to have a legal standing to say, people were treated differently here and people were treated differently there, I'm being discriminated against because I'm being treated differently. You have to basically scrap that ordinance and start over.
And that makes more sense. But if we were to go back to, so we have this social ideology, right, of how we think society should operate, human culturally, right? We have this cultural ideology, liberal and conservative, and then we have a financial spectrum,
right? And political was the third one I was going to get back to, but I didn't finish my second thing on.
I'm sorry.
No, and this is natural in conversation. You kind of just keep dragging and zigging and zagging. The second thing of where your argument falls short, and again, as you laid it out, principle that you said, it's correct, right? We have ordinances and we have rules, follow the rules. We have laws, follow those laws. Mm-hmm. Great. I already talked about why it falls down on the city council side, permitting side. On the law side, it falls down because we may or may not have clear enough rules about what is hypersexual behavior in public spaces. And so that leaves it. And again, for the law, just like you talked about in your ticket scenario, the police have the option of discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So they could say, oh, yeah, that doesn't quite cross the line to me. I'm not going to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And our police works for our liberal city mayor. So they are going to do things that they are directed to do,
mm-hmm.
right? They're going to make statements that they're directed to make, and they're going to enforce things that they're directed to enforce and not, right? So this can be completely solved. I'm not actually for a city ordinance that bans hypersexual behavior in parks. I don't think we need anything that specific. I think we need what you described, which is a clear permitting process. So we have to scrap what we have and create a new one that then gets followed 100%. So that way there's no legal ambiguity about who's being discriminated against.
Mm-hmm.
And then we may have to beef up and require enforcement of sexual behavior in public laws,
mm-hmm.
right? And then make sure that they're consistently applied.
Right.
So great. If men want to dress up and go dance around, okay, that's fine. But as soon as it crosses the line into, twerking your thong in front of children, they should be arrested.
Mm.
And then this will stop.
Mm.
Right? So the punishment can't be, oh, we're going to arrest you and then we're going to let you go. Right? Like there has to be, an actual punishment, right? So there has to be increased penalties, and correct enforcement. And then I'll have people tell me, oh my gosh, well, I think, and I don't know, maybe it's true. I think girls dancing at cheerleading events is more provocative. Okay, let's put an officer there.
Hmm.
Right? If a cheerleader is twerking in front of kids, all right, maybe they should be arrested along with the adult that authorized that dance move
mm-hmm.
in front of an audience.
So part of this,
let's create fair laws.
But part of this ends up getting into this slippery slope, though, right? Like we were just saying, is like, okay, well, cheerleaders dancing, we run into this where we end up having this stack of laws created to say based around some specific behavior. So then, are we lining out what is twerking, what is shaking your butt? Like we're defining all of these things as saying these actions, because then we start falling into this fascism side, right? On the far right side, where we're going to control, over control, what is allowed and what's not allowed.